Good afternoon, New Bedford Guide followers. We're here live with a New Bedford candidate, um, Tyson Moultrie. So he has pull papers, he has submitted them, and he has signed his intent to run for mayor of New Bedford, which is a 4-year term. Something new this year that hasn't happened in New Bedford. It used to be a 1-year term, then it's a 2-year, now it's a 4-year. So we're here with Tyson. So welcome to the studio, Tyson.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So we had some technical difficulties. We're trying this again, so we're gonna go. Gonna have deja vu or vujade, whoever you want to say. So just tell people a little about yourself. You were in the Air Force. We talked about earlier.
Yes. Was in the Air Force. Did my 6 and 2 Air Force Reserves, and actually just officially got out October 2018, October 28th to be exact.
Yeah, Josh, still nothing. So we're gonna have to stop it.
I heard it.
Do you hear it? All right, we'll continue then. So you're from Springfield. You're not from the area.
No, not originally.
So what brought you to the city of New Bedford?
So what brought me to the city of New Bedford was actually the people. I was in Fall River and moved to Fall River in 2014. I actually didn't know anyone, but I was told by my mentor that I need to get out, meet people, and he recommended that I go to the TEDx New Bedford salon, and I met Dolores Hirschman there, and kind of ushered myself in there. And the amount of positivity and open-mindedness of people there that I had no clue who they were. I went out that night and actually had dinner with 2 people at random, and that kind of started my love affair with New Bedford, if you will.
Okay, great. So you're originally from Springfield. You went to Fall River, and then you're now in New Bedford.
Yes.
That's kind of the trail here.
The trail, yeah.
Before that was military, right?
With military moving around in there.
So you're up against Mayor Mitchell, who's been around. He won his first election in 2011. He ran unopposed 1 year. He's won his elections pretty easy, and he's got $200,000. So how much money do you have in your campaign chest?
So I'm actually fully self-funded. And so with that being said, my wallet.
But you will take donations, right?
Yeah, I absolutely will take donations. But like I kind of mentioned before, was that I believe that if you're going to be a candidate of the people, right, you have to kind of look out for them. And my mentality is that if you need your money more than I need it, then you keep it and let me run for you, because that's who I'm here to serve anyways. And I just feel like that works out better for the vast majority of New Bedford residents.
As mayor, you're going to run a city of close to 100,000 people. Budget is around close to $300,000. $300 million.
Yeah, 338 mil, right?
Yeah. So, what would be your number one priority?
So my number one priority would be economic development, and that would be through non-traditional agricultural economy, as well as infusing tech. So someone that I spoke with, Kevin Millett, we talked at length about the Silicon Seaport and how do we actually integrate tech and agriculture into the environment in here to actually make it turn a profit, create revenue, and create an export for New Bedford.
What's interesting, because I've always talked, so New Bedford, the history goes from whaling to textiles,
right,
to fishing. And as we know, that the fish industry, I wouldn't say it's like on a steep decline, but you can't rely on it forever.
Right.
So there always has to be, I always ask, what's the next thing? And that's what you're saying is going to be technology?
Absolutely.
So explain tech, though. What do you mean by tech?
Technology, I mean, it's really just a streamlined, innovative way to transfer information, goods, whether that's cloud-based. I mean, even asking people, residents now, to use an app sometimes is a little outside of the scope. So it's kind of educating the population on where the rest of the world and society is heading, and getting them acclimated to that so that we can have a bigger impact on a broader range of people.
So we'll talk some issues, and this is stuff I've talked to mayor candidates in the past, and also obviously Mayor Mitchell. Some of the big issues in New Bedford we'll talk. Okay, so I would say number one in my mind in the state of Massachusetts is the opioid crisis. Okay, so fentanyl is 90% of all the overdose deaths in 2018. We still have, I would say New Bedford has an average of 1 to 2 overdoses a day. What would you consider a solution for that?
So I believe in a lot of the NA principles, right? And when it comes to that, one of the things that we're missing is faith And I'm not talking from a religious or spiritual perspective, but I'm talking about faith in our community and in each other. And when you're looking at the opioid crisis that happens, typically it's a coping mechanism for something else. And when we look at it from that perspective, we have to get in a preventive mindset, not necessarily always a rehabilitative mindset, right? You want to have that as a fail-safe, but if we can get there a little bit sooner, talk to people a little bit earlier, and have faith in each other to help with problems, to reach out to the person who's next to you and really take that village mentality, we can get some of those preventative things in place to keep family units together. And that way we can avoid some of the, dives into that.
So you already sound like a good politician. So what would be like a specific thing you could bring up as far as that?
So, I mean, I
Like,
do
what would
want
you do to get people into that kind of mindset?
It's going to be working with actual mental health counselors.
Okay.
Is one thing. I want to work with them closely to find out what policies they believe can come into play to help encourage that behavior from our residents, right? To seek the help and not feel like they're going to be chastised or that they're going to be ostracized because they are addicted. That's kind of one of the first things. Oftentimes I see online very harsh treatment of people who are addicted to substances, whether they're nodding off or things like that. And sometimes it's our reaction that keeps them in that place.
Yeah, there's that. There was Massachusetts ran through this End the Stigma campaign kind of thing. I think that's important, one thing. 'Cause
Absolutely.
once you don't see someone as a human, you don't think that you're not going to give them the help they need.
Right. I mean, and I don't want to militarize it, but in a manner of speaking, sometimes when you have to do certain things you may not agree with, sometimes you have to look at people and say, I have to remove a bit of humanity in order to do this effectively. So, that hurts. And you want to put humanity back into our city.
Some of the big topics on this issue that's really hit New Bedford for decades now is needle exchange programs potentially.
Yes.
That was voted down, I think, in the 80s by 80 to 1, 8% to 10% or something like that.
Yeah.
I think the mind is open now.
I want to
right?
bring. I definitely want to bring needle programs in, and I have spoken to a few people about that. Someone who spearheaded that previously. So I will definitely have that on my agenda.
So if you have questions at home, I see a bunch of comments, questions. The audio is good this time. If you have questions, throw them out. I want this to be your show. You will have asked the candidates the questions as we have them on here. I'm going to ask one more, and we'll go to some of the ones from the folks online. So segue into opioids. A lot of people think marijuana actually is a positive thing to help the opioid crisis. Is that what you believe?
I do believe that is a positive there. There are correlations between a decrease in opioid use where there are dispensaries, where there are grows. So I believe that if we put that into our economy, and not even just from a consumption standpoint, but also from an industrial and commercial aspect, that we'll be better off economically as well as curtailing some of the opioid issues.
Do you know what New Bedford's ties to marijuana is now as far as production or retail?
So I do realize they just had a meeting regarding some of the zoning side of it, and I spoke to Scott Lima about some of that. So I did get a brief on that, and I did attend a couple of meetings. So I'm getting brushed up. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know everything about it.
So I'll give you real quick.
Yeah.
So I know you're more. I mean, you're just starting your candidacy.
Right.
So you're going to be reading.
Absolutely.
So we do have production, but we don't have a retail.
Right.
So that's I think one of the biggest things that you'll hear a complaint on. I think with the mayor and the city council.
Yes.
Is so Fall River. I talked to the mayor over there. Their first year they're getting $700,000 in revenue. The second year is estimated at $1.3 million.
Yeah.
We have revenue from the production side, but not the retail side.
Right.
They're on their 13th application.
Right. And they
But I understand we have 3 right now in the process, but it doesn't mean they're going to actually be coming out.
I believe there's 7 currently with the mayor.
Yeah, I'm not sure exact numbers. But so I don't know we're going to have a retail this year in the city. So right now you have to go spend your money outside the city. What do you think about that? What would you do to change that?
I'm 100% against that. All right. Having to go elsewhere for something that we should be on the forefront of is a little ridiculous to me.
Well, I look at this because New Bedford, we just did their Elm Street parking garage. It cost $5 million. I think something like 3 million or so was borrowed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, if you had the retail revenue there, you might not have to borrow that kind of money.
Right.
But the city's financials is not so bad, as I think we got one of the high AAA ratings, and it's pretty good. But I think we're missing the boat, maybe.
Absolutely.
On marijuana.
I feel like we're going to be late adopters, and when that happens, you're typically picking up the scraps of what's left behind by others.
So Lee Ferreira asks, how about our infrastructure? And I'll get more specific on that. The one thing that's always popular on Facebook is potholes.
Potholes,
right?
yes.
So I'll give you some numbers. So based on the mayor's office, they fill about 10,000 a year. Okay?
Yeah.
So, but seems like they're a temporary fix.
Yes.
So what would your plan be different than, say, Mayor Mitchell's?
So one thing that I'm looking at that the city does is they're currently using traditional means of filling the potholes. That means the asphalts, the cements, and all of that, right? What I want to look at is alternative means. So I'm looking at either carbon negative or carbon null materials that are around 15% of the cost of traditional materials. So that means that we would be able to reduce what we're spending to actually fill the potholes, which effectively means we can spend more or actually fill more with the same amount of money. So that also plays into why I want us to actually become our own manufacturers and industrial side for those kinds of products, using plant-based cements and asphalts, even steels, and reducing the cost of what we're doing to actually fix those things in order to fix more of them, and we're creating it.
So a big thing for me, and I've talked about this a lot over the years, the fishing industry in New Bedford. So New Bedford's per capita is exactly the same as Fall River's, but we have the #1 fishing port on the planet, right? So how do you explain that? What do you think you could do to get that money into the residents' hands as opposed to maybe corporations and outside of the city?
I feel like that is going to be a tougher issue, if I'm honest with you, just because people become complacent with what they're used to, right? I don't feel like the ports are really pushed to do more. And I'm not saying I want them to necessarily do more. What I'm looking at is, again, self-reliance, and how do we become more reliant upon our land and upon what we can do from our standpoint, and not be so focused on what their pockets are doing over there. But we need to improve anyways, and it's not necessarily their fault. We have to look at ourselves and say we can do more.
Do you know how many millionaires live in New Bedford?
Isn't it 9?
It's like 5.
9, yeah.
It's like 5, right?
Yeah.
But the fishing industry is like a $300 million industry.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've always questioned, like, does the money come into the city like at all? I don't know.
I don't
like,
really.
I love the fishermen, and I do love
Right.
what they do as far as probably a huge tax base, I'm sure, for the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bring a lot of jobs to the city. Mm-hmm. But I come back to the questions no one can answer for me is, how do we have the same per capita income as Fall River? It does not have an industry like the fishing industry. That is the size, the revenue in the fishing industry is the size of the entire city budget.
I honestly feel like a lot of money doesn't come into the city from the port. And again, they're used to that. That's become okay. And with the plan that I'm proposing when it comes to workforce development, when we have big players like that in the game, it will no longer be okay to sit idly by and watch the city kind of crumble in certain areas when you have the funds to help. So if you plan on making a lot of money in New Bedford, then you have to plan on doing a lot for New Bedford.
Sure. All right, we'll move to another topic, which is always big on, I would just say, social media around the city, panhandling.
Yes.
So do you agree that panhandling's a freedom of speech, or do you think it should be restricted?
I don't believe it's a freedom of speech, and I also don't believe that necessarily all of the people who are panhandling either want to be doing that or the ones who are doing it.
Anyone wakes up as a kid says, I want to be a panhandler.
Right. When I grew up, I want to be
Yeah.
a panhandler, right? It's circumstantial. But what I believe is I want to take the focus off of them actually panhandling and what we can do to help migrate some of the things that cause a panhandling, whether that be opioids, whether that be not having a sense of purpose, right? Sometimes they feel like that's the only way that they can make money for the day. When I look around and I see plots of land that lay barren, when I see plenty of underdeveloped or underutilized mill spaces, I see potential for homes. I see potential for creating jobs for the homeless population to give them that sense of purpose back and help the city. I see beach cleanup workers. I see street cleaners that are actually on foot, picking up, being eyes, not just a sweeper rolling by that may not catch everything. And I think that would give them a sense of purpose, add to the city, and add to their wallets.
I've seen some really popular articles on the internet, and they basically reference cities earmarking a really small amount of their budget to pay panhandlers a wage to go clean the city, basically.
Yes.
It's something that you would look at.
That is absolutely something I would look at.
Yeah, I think it's so. Have you seen what Mayor Mitchell has done to try to solve the problem?
I've heard something about spiking islands.
Yeah, we call them spike cobblestones.
Yeah.
They're just kind of like inverted like 45 degrees to kind of keep you off. But then we have like photos of people just walking across
Yeah.
and whatnot. And then the other is signs above their head that says "Don't give to them."
And
What would you do differently? What would be some
I mean,
other?
for me, again, having that stuff, you're not getting to the root of the issue. You're making people feel dehumanized. You're making people feel like they're not a part of the society, like they're not a part of the fabric of New Bedford. And if they feel like that, how is that empowering? How is that pushing them up the ladder instead of pushing them lower? You can't have them be at the bottom of the totem pole and then still want to hold them there. It's not okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of programs. I mean, the city, a lot of the money that we get in from the state heads over to the Social Catholic Services in Fall River, but it is a lot of money that comes in from the homeless count.
Right.
Do you think the money is appropriated correctly, or does it go somewhere that you would say differently?
I honestly can't speak on where that money is going. But what I can say is that if I assess it and I look at it and I see that some things that don't add up, then there will be some changes that I will suggest or push for. Ultimately, it's about doing what's best for everyone, not just the people that already kind of have the best.
So another big issue is always property taxes. Okay, so it keeps going up every year. I have city councilors tell me, but we lowered the rate, and I'm like, yeah, but you raised the value. So
Exactly.
So the property, I wrote an article of I was working on an article. I haven't published it yet, actually. We have cities, we have buildings in the city that have been rated
Right.
for drugs, and the city assesses it at a higher value the next year. And I'm sitting going like, this thing's been rated like 3 or 4 times, the value goes up. And I've called the assessors, asked how the values go up. They say, well, they got guidelines for the state, and if the landlord lets you in, they can assess it. But so it's basically a simple formula. It's property value, percentage, and you get the tax rate, right? So what the city council does is lower the rate, but the values go up.
But their values
So
go up, right.
I think last year the average property value went up. I want to say it was $200, $400, somewhere in that range. And businesses only went up like $20.
Yeah. It was like
So the business didn't get a hit, but they've been getting hit hard in the past. So
Yeah. I mean, proposition, if you look at like
Yeah, go ahead.
proposition 2.5, isn't really going to go anywhere. And a lot of the things that people want the city to do, again, and this may not be the most popular opinion, but it does require tax dollars to do it. So in a world, you can't complain about what you want to happen and then turn around and chastise for someone doing what's necessary in order for it to happen.
Everyone's like, I want these services, and then when you got to pay it.
And then when
you've
you've got to pay, right. So I just ask everyone to be pragmatic, be realistic about what your expectations are. And again, my plan, when I look at it, I'm saying I want to actually create revenue. All right. I want to bring businesses here. I want to create an environment where people are earning more money, that they're gaining specialized skills in non-traditional agriculture and tech. And when you're doing that, I believe that we're going to be able to turn our focus from the raising of property values and really focus on, well, now we have the revenue, so it's not so big of an issue.
Now, again, I know you're new to the political scene. Do you know the largest increases in the city budget every year?
The largest increases? No.
What's causing the biggest increase every year?
What's that?
It's pensions,
Oh, yes. I have.
right? So pension is, and then health insurance.
Right. Now, and I realized there was a firefighter who pretty much was like, they used to have such great insurance, and now it's pretty much
Nowadays, it
not.
seems like you pay more and get less.
Right.
Yeah.
Pay more, get less. And it's part of the game. As much as we want to help those things and increase those things, we have to do other things in order to get what we want.
Yeah, I try to be fair because the property tax goes up, but to Mayor Mitchell and any mayor in any city, the non-discretionary spending, they have no control over, keeps
right.
going up, right?
Because I believe there's about 75% of the budget that's pre-allocated.
Yeah, it's
so
up there, yeah.
we're looking at maybe 102 million. That's
And that has a
discretionary.
percentage increase every year, right? Because the city government, their pay raises go up, that kind of stuff.
What I do want to kind of mitigate is some of the raises that are happening with people that live outside of our area, right? Their cost of living is different, so therefore, when we're taking someone in and giving them a residential waiver, we have to now take on the cost of living to make it worth it for them to work in New Bedford. So some of that's got to curtail, and those people are either going to stick around, or we're going to have to replace them with qualified people from our communities, or we're going to have to get people to transplant in and live here who are qualified, because that is a part of the budget that we kind of need to get a handle on.
Yeah, so we're getting a lot of, as soon as I say property taxes, we got a ton of comments. Yes, property taxes, sick of property tax increases. So Lee says directly, Tyson agreed, but they're assessing unfairly in my opinion. Why am I paying more taxes to cover the mask job NB is doing on Route 18 downtown area for decorative streets? So she's saying she thinks I don't know if you saw the last floods. Route 8, they just redid Route 18 and it's flooding again.
And so that actually goes into my climate adaptation and resilience. With that being said, we need to focus on using gardens to actually mitigate some of the floodwaters. I don't know if you've been to Haskell Gardens yet.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, they actually have one right on the side of one of the buildings. And the woman, Kristen, who's the gardener there, her office used to flood when there were heavy rains. When they put that in there, now she has no more flooding issues. So I want to take more decorative and creative ways to mitigate some of those flooding issues.
Yeah, of course, if you become mayor, you surround yourself with some of the smart people and they figure it out.
Absolutely. I'm not a gardener,
Yeah, exactly.
but I know
You're
some
not gonna
good
be out
ones.
there laying
But I know some good
seeds,
ones.
right? So I'll do another question. I'm going to go to your, after that, I'm going to go to your website and talk about your platform issues. So big thing right now in the city is the police union.
Yes.
So there's a lot of stuff I won't be able to talk about, but there is a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes between the mayor's office and what the police union wants for pay raises and other benefits.
And the
have you heard anything on that, or what have you?
I mean, I did see some paperwork, interestingly enough, that came out yesterday.
Yep. Union
so-
posted on their social media.
Yeah, so I mean, they put it out there, and what I will say is that if we want our police to do a better job, we have to pay them like we want them to do a better job, and respecting their positions and the jobs that they go out and do is not something I take lightly. I'm pretty sure you kind of feel the same way. When
Sure.
we strap on a uniform, there's a certain level of pride and dignity that you have to carry yourself with, and it's hard to do that when you're broke.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, to be fair, I would say look at the budget though. Look at the police. I think the police do get paid pretty well in the city of New Bedford. There is
if you,
go ahead.
if you factor in their detail work and different things like that, but when I looked at the city website and I saw the starting pay being between $13.44 and $16, I said, you could just go to Amazon, get $18.50, and work overtime.
so
and
that
you'd
to be
better
fair
off.
though, that is the cadet duty
cadet
kind of
duty,
guy.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
so.
like
But how are we attracting quality
Sure.
quality officers that are going to be dedicated at a rate like that?
But you realize you're going to be the guy if you make it into the
Oh.
office on the other side of negotiation.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
what would you do to save the taxpayer money too, though? Because now you negotiate for the taxpayer, even though you respect the police across from you.
I know.
So
I understand.
it's a tough spot,
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
It's definitely a tough spot to be in, but it's one that I believe that I'm pragmatic enough for.
All right, so I'm going to go to your website. You have a section on there, and people can go to there. It's tie4nbma.com.
Yes.
I just went to your platform section. So it's broken into a bunch of sections here.
Yeah, there's
I'm going to start at the
6.
bottom. So climate change is always a big, I don't know if me and you agree on this kind of stuff, but climate change, adaptation, and resilience. So make New Bedford the world's first smart city-state, establish localized resource security, engineered resilience, and ecological restoration. What does all that mean?
So essentially what we just talked about, some of the flood gardens, that plays a factor. And we have a clever name for something called LIFE, which is locally integrated food economy. So that's the consumption of goods that are grown here. And so that way we can create that export that I speak of to bring more revenue into the city. That's going to help take care of some of these issues that we're facing. I don't want to say all of them, but I'll say many of them.
Are you in, so you know that Keating's going to be here for the Green New Deal. Are you a proponent of the Green New Deal?
I am not necessarily a supporter of the Green New Deal. I feel like there are some points in it that are just not
You don't want to spend $100 trillion
Nah,
in the next
no,
10 years?
I'm looking for something a little bit more sustainable and feasible. And so while, and I'll say, if you're not a climate change person or anything like that, what I will say is if you compared, again, traditional asphalt versus an agricultural asphalt, if you could pay 15% of the cost to accomplish what you were doing, wouldn't that make more sense to you?
Yeah.
So that's the perspective that I'm coming at it
Yeah,
from.
if you
So-
use less resources to accomplish the same mission.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm really attacking it from. So even if you don't believe in climate change and don't believe we need to do any major things to adapt for things that could potentially come our way, you can at least buy in on the fact that it's better for the pocket.
So here's something I think you and Mitchell will disagree on. So I have in your the housing section here, preserve and expand affordable housing. So there's about 5,000 people on the waiting list for affordable housing in New Bedford. 5,000 families. Okay, so when I asked Mitchell, this is going to be like 4 years ago, if he was for expanding it or not, he just said status quo. So what would you would expand the public housing in New Bedford? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not necessarily saying expanding the public housing, but I'm saying currently we have developers coming in that are interested in doing things here. The train is projected to be here in a few years
South
or so.
Coast Rail, yeah.
Right, the South Coast Rail. And with that means that more bodies are going to be here, okay? And they're probably going to be commuting back and forth to Boston, other areas. And we have to prepare for the bodies that are going to be coming, as well as take care of the bodies that are already here. So to not expand that stuff is going to be a detriment to our current residents, and it's going to devalue the residents that are going to come in and how they're going to feel about the community.
So when you say affordable housing, is that Section 8, public housing?
That would be,
or just cheap rent?
It would be cheaper rent, but looking at the developers and saying, hey, listen, a percentage of this has to be under this bar in order for you to come here and develop and be as profitable as you want to be, because realize that whether you like it or not, we're in a capitalist society, and they're not going to come here if they can't make money. So we have to make it so they can make money, but we also have to make it so that our residents aren't the ones being tapped out.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. So public safety, obviously, so we just had a homicide yesterday. There hasn't been a lot of homicide. Generally, New Bedford has 3 to 10 homicides a year over the last 10 years. It's not a big, people make it look like we're like Detroit or Chicago, and it's not.
Right.
It's not that dangerous.
It's not even Dorchester.
Yeah, so we had a homicide yesterday. Right now, the police union is in negotiations. What would your difference be for public safety? Like, what would you maybe differently? Would it be the same as what Mitchell's doing now, or would you add more police officers, less police officers? What would
I believe in community policing, which I believe everyone says, but not everyone understands what that actually means. My uncle, who, I actually went through a homeless phase in my senior year of high school, and I lived with my uncle, and he was an officer for over 30 years. And when I went and rode with him and saw how he interacted with the community, I saw how they respected him, how they treated him. I can give a story of a guy named Preacher Man, who was generally like the drunk preacher on the corner. And my uncle would oftentimes know exactly when Preacher Man would be out getting his drink and kind of starting to harass people. And he would go there to meet him, to take him to a restaurant, to get him a bottle of water, get him a plate of food. So that way he would get him away from the people, to just kind of change how people would call in about him or feel threatened by him. And I feel like if we take more of that approach and understand our community, we can get a lot more out of it. That see something, say something won't just be a quote. It'll be something that people feel like, I can do that with this officer, and they'll handle it. They won't just haul them off.
So what would be guidance you tell a chief of police to do more community policing? What would that involve?
You have to be more out there, ask questions, knock on doors, not
So
just
police leaving cop cars and walking
leaving
around
cop cars, walking around. And not just knocking on houses when there's an issue, but knocking to say, if you see a garden that you like, knock on the door and say, hey, I just wanted to compliment your garden. It looks good. Hey, you got a nice bike. Doing things like that fosters positive reactions from people.
Yeah.
Complimenting.
Yeah, I think if you
Simple.
look on social media, some of the best shares out there is a cop playing basketball with
Right.
a kid, or doing a street race and letting the kid beat him in the street. That's how, now that kid looks up to the officer,
right.
and then potentially might tell the officer something they wouldn't have in the
No,
future.
that's
Hey,
true.
there's that house over there
Whether
sells
it's
drugs
doing-
or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah, it is. You got to have that trust, I think. And we've had our ups and downs in America with the police force. And they do work their butt off. We agree on
Absolutely.
that. But we had Chief Cadero in here last, I want to say 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about some good stuff, and he also talked the bad stuff. And he said, every career has, bad seeds and people who make it through the system in there and do bad stuff. It's how you deal with them that really
Absolutely.
matters. But so what would happen if, and I find this sometimes with, again, going back to unions. So you're a mayor, you say, hey, I want you out of your cars. And union says, no, I don't want to get out of the cars. What do you do?
There's definitely going to be a designation where they're going to get out of cars. And I know if there's officers out there who agree with me currently, that's perfectly fine. But my question would be to you, why are you scared to get out of your car? Why are you scared to engage with the community that you're supposed to be serving? So if you have a problem with me saying you have to do a couple hours on the block, on the beat, then I have to ask you, why do you have a problem with that? And if you can explain to me why you're having a problem engaging with the community, I'm all open ears, but there's something you need to look at within yourself.
So I'll go another part with public safety. The brown blackout things of the fire department? You heard about that?
When there was that a little bit ago where
They rotate so they're building a super facility in the south end. It's going to combine two of the fire stations and I think one of the police. So you can have like a
Like
really
a
super
complex.
fire/police complex, right? But to do that, to save money, they do with these things they call brown/blackouts.
Okay.
So one fire station closes its doors for a full day, and then two others absorb that area.
Okay.
And we haven't, of course, every time there's a fire and something bad happens, they blame it on these brownout blackouts. Not necessarily true on factual.
Right.
But it does potentially, if you look at, opened my eyes one year when I went to the fire department, me and Josh, he's running our stuff. We went to the Fall River where they do the training.
Right.
And they show the furniture today isn't like the furniture in 1950. It's plastic and very flammable, where back in the 50s, it was
Right.
wood, hardwood.
Right.
Took a long time ago. Now it's up, so minutes count.
Right. Absolutely.
I think if you were to win mayor, it wouldn't be a factor, but would you ever consider something like that if you had to save funds, maybe cut down reaction time to save money?
I would consider it. Again, I'm not going to sit here and propose to be the expert on anything, but what I am is a quick learner. And again, pragmatism tends to lead me. So I will consider all options that make the most sense and go with that for what's best for the people and citizens of New Bedford.
All right, we'll do one more. Government accountability.
Yes.
So I find it's very hard to find out what's going on in your local, state, and federal government. So like you can go to, the government doesn't push information out unless it really suits their need.
Right.
So a mayor's office will send out press releases that's going to help them, right? But if you want to find out legislation's going on, you want to find out things, you have to go like be an active citizen.
Yeah, you have to really dive in.
So what would you do to improve accountability and transparency, I would say to.
So, I mean, one of the first things is receipts is probably the quickest and easiest answer to that. Showing people where their dollars are actually going, what percentage of the dollars are going where, and kind of, I don't want to give them yet maybe the right to kind of say, I don't want to fund this or that, but leaning in that direction so that people can say, you know what, that's actually something I don't believe in. So I kind of want to push more of my money over here than over there. And I feel like with that type of transparency, you'll gain more trust, you'll gain more faith, and then at the end of the day, people can only look at themselves to a degree and say, well, I didn't fund that, so that's my fault.
All right, so Tyson Moultrie, he is running for mayor. We won't have the official who else is running for mayor until August 16th when the final deadline happens. Right now, the best way to find information on him is tiefornbma.com, and you have a social media page too, right? Facebook.
Yes, it's Vote for Tyson Moultrie. All of my social media is at Tie for NBMA, so I'm make myself pretty easy to find.
Yeah, I think as residents of the city, you got to follow people who are running. Doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. Just see what they're about. Maybe get a little more information on them.
Absolutely.
He does have some details on his website, and you're approachable as far as email and other kind of
Absolutely,
things.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm very approachable.
I think there's a content section on your site. So,
Yes.
hey, I always say if you're going to try to, if you're going to be involved in the politics, test out your candidates, ask some questions.
Yes.
don't just go based what you hear rumors on social media or just basically like, hearsay information. Go find out, talk to the person directly. And
Right.
I have a feeling you're going to be knocking on a lot of people's doors in the
I'm
next
gonna
few months, right?
knock on doors. I'm going to be doing some events, a grab a coffee event at Green Bean, August 19th in the morning, starting at 8 a.m.
Yep.
So, I'm looking forward to having people come out and drill me. I mean, put me up against the wall and just launch at me, because ultimately I have to learn, and that's the
I
best
didn't
way
know
to
that.
do
Let's
it.
get another half hour in here. No. We're definitely going to have you talk to you again, and we're going to hope to have debates
Yes.
based on the candidates who are running.
I'll be here.
So
I'll say that now.
If we get at least 3 people running, which right now we only have 2,
Two.
then we'll have a preliminary election in October. If we don't, then you'll move right on to November and go from there. So still time to run for candidate for any of the offices, at-large, city council, ward council, New Bedford, mayor, and for a school committee. So you got till like about another week to do that. But thanks for joining us and letting people know who you are.
Thanks for having me, and I look forward to engaging with more people. Don't be scared to talk to me.
Yeah.
If you see me out, stop me, and I'll talk to you.
Yeah, and share this video so people can get a little more to know about Tyson. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.